In the early hours of August 4th, 1974, I just couldn't sleep. It was stifling hot outside under a full moon. I lay on my bed in our home in a very isolated and rural area reading a book. We didn't have air conditioning in the house at the time, so I had my window up and just a screen separated me from the outside. A thick woods lay within about 30 feet of my bedroom. The trees looked like black silhouettes against the moonlit sky. It was about 3 a.m. when I heard a car drive past. We lived on a very lonely country road. Our only neighbors were a widowed lady whose house was located several hundred feet from the end of our driveway, and a single mother who lived on a farm back up a long lane further up the road. I could hear the car stop at the end of the neighbor's farm lane. 2 car doors were shut, and I became completely alert. I shut off my bedroom light and went to my window where I watched the road. I saw 2 dark figures approaching our property line past the woods. My heart nearly stopped when these 2 men turned into our yard and started approaching the side of our house where my bedroom window was located, as well as our telephone wires. In those days with no cell phones, we were completely at the mercy of our landline phones. If someone cut our wires, we were cut off from the world. I quietly crept across the hall to my parents' bedroom. I awakened my mother and told her about the 2 men outside. She got up as our telephone rang, alerting my father. As my father took the call, my mother went to my bedroom window to look outside. When she first glanced towards the road, there was nobody there. When she turned and looked the other way, she saw 2 men standing to the side of the window looking up at our telephone wires. One man was wearing a light-colored t-shirt, and the other had a light-colored short-sleeve shirt that was unbuttoned in front. One man held a cigarette. My mother turned away and quietly went to summon my father. My father's phone call had been from the police. They said that 2 men fitting the very description of the men outside our home had just attempted a break-in into our service station about 4 miles away. A police officer had turned his cruiser into the service station parking lot and saw the men running away from the building. Our guard dog was barking as the men quickly deserted the area and made their way to the back road behind the station. That road would lead them right to our home, if they knew where we lived. Obviously, they did know more about us than we would ever know about them. They had to know about the service station and the connection between it and us. They knew where we lived. They even knew where our phone wires were outside of the house. I believe they knew that they had been seen by the police, and that my father would be called away from the house due to their attempt to break in there. If my father had been lured away, my mother, sister, and I would have been home alone in that house where nobody could hear us scream. These men apparently planned to cut our phone wires, so we would not be able to summon help. Deep inside, I believe that the plan these men had so elaborately schemed together included possibly murdering my mother, sister, and me. I was never so scared in my life. The police were alerted to come to our house. My father got a gun and the men were frightened away. Their plan had been thwarted because I couldn't sleep that night. This story gets even stranger when you go back to the part where one of the police officers responding to the call was involved in a car accident and needed our towing service. My father and the police talked at our home while another employee towed a police cruiser that had been in an accident. I can remember sitting with my back against the wall in my parents' bedroom until I saw the sun start coming up and the sky turning pink in the east. The men had left no clues behind. I would like to say this incident was put away in my mind and that things were the same after it happened. Things were never the same. I could not sleep without having a guard dog at our home. My father had air conditioning installed and obtained a permit to carry a handgun. Our entire family was more aware of the dangers that lurked in our neighborhood, in anyone's neighborhood, even in 1974. As I grew older, I learned more about criminal behavior and true crime. I learned about Ted Bundy and how during that same summer of 1974, he had been terrorizing the Northwest, leaving behind a trail of murdered girls who were just like me. Ted Bundy's victims were known for having long brown hair parted in the middle and being college girls. My hair was long and brown and parted in the middle. I was starting college later that month. I don't believe that Ted Bundy was outside our home on August 4th, 1974, but I do believe it was someone capable of doing the horrific things Ted Bundy did to young women in the 1970s. Today I'm a 59-year-old woman. I've been married for 33 years, and I have a 24-year-old daughter. I often think back to August 4th, 1974, and wonder, what if? What if I had been sleeping that night? What if those men had gone into our house after cutting our phone wires? What if I had died that night at the hands of these men? What if I had never been a victim of these men? It could have been worse, but I still feel that I am a victim. The positive thing that came off me being a victim was that I learned all I could about criminal behavior, criminal justice, crime prevention, and even headed up a neighborhood watch program during my adult years. I obtained a position in law enforcement and worked with sex offenders for our local sheriff's office for a time. I like to believe that I am more alert, and that perhaps some of my actions that came of the result of August 4th, 1974, might have helped at least one other person. I'm a 27-year-old female. My story starts long ago. I was 6 or so and my mom had just had my new baby sister. Back in 1996, it was all the rage to dress your children in matching outfits, especially if they were twins, which I am. People would stop us and tell my mom that she should put us in modeling. We had strawberry blonde hair and green blue eyes with dimples. We were like candy for adults. They would stop my mom just to pinch our cheeks. We hated it, but we were used to strangers talking to us because of our adorableness. My mother took notice and would quickly move us away to warn us never to speak to strangers. Luckily, that stuck with one of us. I was very protective of my sister, and I would hold her hand to make sure we were always together. Which, looking back, it just looked like a package deal for creeps. One morning my mother had been up late with my infant sister and was tired. My twin and I told her we were going out in the yard to play. She just waved a hand and told us to stay close to the house and not to go near the street. My house was the first in the neighborhood, so the main road ran along one side of our yard. We knew to stay away from that side of the yard. While my sister and I were outside, a small car pulled around to our driveway from the main road. My sister said that she thought it could be Uncle Ned. I knew right away that was not his car. I became very weary as the driver opened the door and a man appeared from the cab. At first, he stood with one foot still in the car. He had a smile on his face, but he wasn't looking at me. He was studying the yard, probably scoping for any adults. When he realized my mother wasn't around, he then focused on me. My mind remembers everything about him. He wore a dark brown coat. He had a reddish-brown car. He was an attractive man in his early 30s. His hair was long, but well-kept and brown in color. And he had brown eyes. He said to me, "I am looking for the ice cream store. Do you know where I can find one?" I just looked at him, with what I'm sure was my best glare. Then I heard my twin sister say to the man, "There is one down the road. That way, I think." She trailed off and looked down the road. The creep had his eyes locked on me. Then he smiles and begins to speak and look at my sister. "Oh, how far? Do you know?" My sister began to speak, but the man cut her off. "Could you show me? If you come, I'll buy you and your sister some ice cream." The man finally stepped all the way from the car. Something inside me snapped. I felt mad at this man. I knew that he was up to no good. I squeezed my hand around my sister's and screamed at the man, "We don't talk to strangers." and without wasting another moment, I ran up the hill, dragging my sweet and trusting sister behind me. She seemed to be in shock as I pulled her. By the time we reached the door, I heard the man's car squeal off. My mother was feeding my sister when we entered. I told my mother, but there was nothing there when she looked, and she thought I was confused. No cops were called because I was a 6-year-old with a wild imagination, and my sister never spoke up about it. The part that bothers me is that wasn't the last time my twin and I were approached. A few years later in a store, we noticed a man in the toy aisle staring at us. We felt creeped out, so we walked to another aisle. This man seemed to be in his late 30s and was balding. He did not have a child with him, nor did he look like he should be there. When he came around the corner, we quickly walked back to the aisle we were in before, thinking we were very clever in that if he came back we would know he was following us. He quickly walked right up to us, grabbed a Barbie box, and pretended to read the back. We didn't blink twice before we ran from the toy section to where our parents were in line. We were about 10 this time, so we begged and pleaded that they go look, and told them what happened. When my father came around the corner, the Barbie box was on the ground and the man was nowhere to be seen. Something in me thinks we were being stalked for years by the same guy. Call me crazy. You're crazy. But somehow the man seemed familiar. And just like the time before, my parents called me paranoid and nothing was done about it. Later that year, my mom tells me that cops were looking for men who were trying to pick up kids from my road, right past our house on the main road. I know in my heart the man I saw those times was behind it, or a part of it. I was relieved to hear no kids were taken, and I'm grateful that I was there to watch over my sister. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And if you would like to gain early access to all of my content, as well as some other cool perks, make sure you go check out my Patreon page. It's a cool way for you guys to help support the channel, as well as get some cool perks. And if you have a scary story that you would like to submit, make sure you email it to urmaker6260@gmail.com. I appreciate you checking out this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. And here's something a little different. Today I'm going to review this pickle, because I'm enjoying the reviews and the way that people got angry about it. So now we're going to do a pickle. This pickle is amazing. Look at it glisten. It's crispy too. Crack. That was the pickle. Just imagine that pickle noise. This pickle is a great pickle, and I would highly recommend this pickle. Eat the pickle. Buy the pickle. Love the pickle. #LoveThePickle.